Hi, and welcome to the Flight Tracker demo from ETS Avia. Flight Tracker is an EU ETS compliance tool for business aircraft built on the Force.com platform from Salesforce.com. Here we are on the Salesforce.com login screen. Let's go ahead and log into Flight Tracker. When you log into Flight Tracker, the first thing you'll see is the Home tab. On the Home tab, you can do things like create new tasks and flights right from this Quick Create menu. You can see all of your recent items, and you can also see all of your open tasks, which would have been generated either by yourself, ETS Avia, by the system, or by the verifiers. Across the top, you can see the flights, so you could come in here and see all of your flights that you've entered. You can see dashboards, which are graphical representations of your data, and then you also see monitoring plan and aircraft tabs. These are actually here just for reference purposes at this time, because at this point in the demo we're assuming that the monitoring plan has been approved and therefore locked down. Why don't we go ahead and click on the monitoring plan just to see what it looks like. Here in the monitoring plan tab, you can see that there's one monitoring plan called Acme version 1. Let's go ahead and click into that. You can see that there's a lot of data here. Some of this will be entered by you, and some of it will be defaulted for you by ETS Avia because you're using our standardized flight tracker system. Let's go ahead and scroll back up to the top. You can see that there are also some things that are related to this monitoring plan. In this case, there are 3 aircraft that are related to this monitoring plan. There's an approval history section which tells you the approval steps that this monitoring plan went through before it was fully approved. There's a monitoring plan history which tells you all of the changes that happened to this monitoring plan. And then over here there's a notes and attachments section where we have an attachment that's the actual approval from the member state. Down here you can also see that there's a little lock. This means that this record is locked for editing. It can no longer be changed, and that's because it's in approved status and therefore can no longer be changed by regulation. Let's go ahead and click into one of the aircraft. Here on the aircraft record, you can see that there's some aircraft type data, there's some specification data, and some expected operations data. Over here in the aircraft model, you can see that this is actually a link to our internal database for all aircraft, where we can pull in some key information that we use for calculations. You'll also notice up here that there is a lock just like there was on the monitoring plan, and that's because the aircraft are in fact part of your monitoring plan, and once you've submitted and gotten your monitoring plan approved, they can no longer be changed. Up here in the related list section, you can see all of the flights that are related to this particular aircraft. You can see that there are 11 in this case, and that I could create a new flight right from here. I'm going to go ahead and create a new flight, but I'm going to go and do it from the Create New menu, which is what you would see when you first log into the application on the Home tab. Let's go ahead and do that. So here on the New Flight section, we're going to put in all of the information that's required to enter a flight. So let's first put in the aircraft registration marking. We'll put in the verification year. This is required by our verifiers. We'll put in the flight date. Let's say that this was November 20th, 2009. Let's go ahead and put in the departure airport. We'll say that the arrival airport was somewhere in Germany. Can't quite remember, so let's go do a quick lookup and see where that was. So ED, we'll say, oh yes, it was Druitz. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll put in our fuel information. Then we'll put in our number of passengers, which is, say, 4 passengers, and they had 100 kilograms worth of baggage. Down here, you also see the EU ETS exempt checkbox. If you were to check this off, you would also see this open up, and you would be able to give your reason why it was EU ETS exempt. In this case, it's not, so we're going to go ahead and turn that off and click on Save. So you'll see that from entering 10 or 11 fields, the system does a lot of work for you. It automatically calculates whether this is an EU ETS zone. It'll calculate the emission factor, your flight emissions, your total weight, the Great Circle distance, the ton kilometers for this flight, and the fuel consumption. If we scroll down, we'll notice that the system automatically generated a task for us. It said we have to attach the fuel receipt for this particular flight. We could go ahead and complete this task right here, but let's pretend that we forgot or we didn't have the fuel receipt at this time. Next time we log into the application in the Home tab, we'll notice that we have this open task here, which has the same due date as the flight date, and we can go ahead and click into that flight, scroll down to the attachment section, and attach the fuel receipt, which we now have. So let's go ahead and do that and attach the file. We'll click on Done. And now that we've finished that, let's go ahead and close out that task. So now that you've entered lots of data into the system, you probably want to see some analytics around that data to see how you're doing. Let's go ahead and click on the Dashboards tab. Dashboards are basically graphical representations of summary data. So for example, here you see your ETS emissions gauge, which is your actual emissions versus your expected emissions. You see CO2 by city pairs, you see emissions by month. Here we are seeing EU ETS ton kilometers by arrival locality. The same thing over here, just described in a different way. In this case, it's in a table. And then over here, we're seeing fuel consumption by aircraft. The great thing about dashboards is that you can also click into the dashboard and see the raw data that actually made up that dashboard. So let's go ahead and do that here. And here you can see that all of the data that made up that particular summary dashboard. So now you've gotten to the point where you've entered in all your flight data for a particular year, in this case 2009, and it's probably time to submit your data for verification to the verifiers. Let's go ahead and go back to the Home tab. You'll notice that here we have a task that says please submit your 2009 flights for verification. Let's click into that task and take a look. This is giving us some instructions. It says please click on the related to record 2009 of this task and click submit for approval to close off this year. So that's this record over here. It's telling us that all our 2009 flight records will be closed, so we won't be able to make any changes after we don't do this, and that we'll also be notified by ETS-Avia when ETS-Avia approves these flights, and then ultimately when the verifier has approved these flights. So let's go ahead and click into that record. So here we are in the 2009 verification year. We can see all of the flights that are related to this particular flight year. So we see in this case there are 8 flights. You see them sorted by flight date here. So what we would want to do is just confirm that everything is correct here, that we've entered in all our flights and we're ready to submit this for approval. In this case, we're completely ready to submit for approval, and we're going to go ahead and do that. So when we submit for approval, the system will tell us that once we do this, the record will be locked, which is in fact what we want. So we'll go ahead and say yes. Let's click on OK. So here we'll see that this record has been submitted for approval by the Acme Flight Department, and it's been routed to the verification year internal approval queue. Let's go over and take a look at what the administrator sees on the ETS-Avia side. So let's go over here, and we can see that there is a verification year that's been submitted for approval, and we can approve or reject that. Let's go ahead and approve this. We'll say it looks good. We'll submit to verifier now and go ahead and approve that. If we come back to this view and look at it as the Acme end user and just refresh that, we'll see that this has now been approved by the internal approver and has now been submitted to the verification year verifier approval. So let's go back again to the administrator, and let's go back to our Home tab. And here in our Home tab, we'll see that there is another item to approve. It's again the same record. We'll come in here, but in this case, it's for the verifier. So at this point, the verifier has said we've completely approved this verification year. So verifier approves. We'll go ahead and approve. And if we come back as the end user and do another refresh, we'll see that this record has been fully approved, and we'll see in the status that it's changed to verified. Thank you for watching our demo of Flight Tracker. Please visit us at www.etsavia.com for more information.